contribute to the RETA, and we'll have increased tax ratables for the real estate property taxes. And more Roaring Fork Club members have really supported the community. The Roaring Fork Conservancy, the Art Base, and many of the nonprofits are gaining support from membership. So we think that all contributes to the economy and the economic sustainability. On the environment side, these are cozy little log cabins, but they really are disguised. They're all high-performance buildings, so these will all have outstanding sort of performance characteristics in terms of insulation and HVAC systems. Probably one of the most significant things about the sort of environmental treatment of the site is the fact that there are no garages and private vehicles do not circulate. So in our site plan, if I can get the pointer here.
In the middle, push the middle.
This is a site plan which we've prepared, and the major elements of the plan are first, we will be intercepting vehicles at a common garage at the entry to the project. This is a maintenance road, so cabin owner will arrive, their car is intercepted in a common parking garage, and circulation from that point on is in electric golf carts, and there are no garages attached to the cabins. The sort of design concept is for these cabins to be subordinate to the landscape, so we're going to be introducing some grading and water features and landscape that will really heavily screen the cabins, and we'll show some imagery here. I think it's demonstrated over the years that once people separate from their car, their average daily trip generation is reduced. So we believe this will result in lower vehicle miles traveled, so we'll have a VMT reduction as well as the number of trips generated. These folks tend to park their car and circulate in their golf carts for the duration of their stay for the most part, other than obviously occasional trips into town for dinner and maybe trips up valley. The affordable housing piece is being relocated to the northwest corner. This was kind of a first pass. We've continued to make improvements in that site plan, and we will have 17 units. We will exceed basically the town's requirement for affordable housing. We think we can do a better job of getting these units into kind of a campus setting, so there's better kind of social interaction. This is a new pole barn that will house all of the machinery in the wintertime, so it will be undercover. And as you know now, the existing street has been used for off-street parking for employees, and we'll get them organized in parking and get cars off of the street. James is a hard act to follow. I think he really summarized the major issues. We feel that there are 34 conditions that were recommended by staff and the Planning Commission. We would like an opportunity to address each of those. We think we can meet the expectations for all 34 of those conditions. So this is sketch plan. This does not result in a vested right. This just simply gives us the opportunity to come back to you with preliminary and final applications. But we just think it's a good project in terms of what it does for the club, for the community, and we think it's a real demonstration in terms of some innovative approaches for management of the car and private vehicular circulation. So highlights, it's still 13 cabins. We are staying under the original total floor area. The original plan called for 3 single-family residences. We're only proposing 1. That's in this vicinity, so that's a pretty significant reduction in terms of total floor area and trips. There will be some significant innovations in terms of water conservation. We have, James mentioned the plan to attach to city water. This is currently contemplated as an 8-inch line that would really, I think, in terms of fire protection, we'll have a belt and suspenders because these buildings are going to be sprinkled. Plus, we're going to have super high-powered water pumps, fire pumps, and sprinkled buildings. So I think we really have addressed fire protection. So I think that summarizes, we'd be happy to show or respond. We have tons of detail here, but we thought maybe we would give you an opportunity to ask some questions and see if you have concerns about the submission. We are following up on an original approval from 2012, and our original thought was to go directly to preliminary, but we concurred with the staff that it'd be appropriate to go back to sketch. So the planning commission has new members, and there are some new counselors on town council, so everybody gets a chance to see this at the most formative stage before we come in with preliminary plan. So, Dennis, do you want to add anything?
I don't have much to add, except I have been a member of the Roaring Fork Club for 9 years. I feel really blessed to be working with a great team. I would also advise that POS Architects are the architects who are doing our cabin design, and they're the ones who did the original cabin design, so it's very much in keeping with what's out there now. The other member of our team is Sopris Engineering, Yancey Nickel and Stephanie Helfenbein, who are working with us on a technical side. We've done a lot of work over the last several months. We're excited about this opportunity to be before you and to hear your comments and to move forward. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Before we get to the questions, I was just going to do the public hearing. Let me open the public hearing at 7:10. Is there any public comments on this? Hearing none, close it at 7:10. So now back to council for questions. Katie?
Is there a plan to have solar?
I'm sorry,
To
Kate.
have solar?
Solar?
To have solar part of the project?
We do not have solar panels proposed for individual units. I think we're certainly open to ideas about the collective, or, we bandied about ideas for how we might be able to participate in some renewables, but difficult to pull off in kind of, with the cabin kind of design vernacular. So the answer is no. We don't have solar panels proposed at this point.
Okay. It would be great if it could somehow be integrated, especially when you're saying that you're not going to use a vehicle, but you're going to use electric cars or electric golf carts, but then
Yeah.
they're going to be fueled by coal, and so we're getting somewhere, but maybe not as far as we would hope. With that,
Good point.
affordable housing, are all the units, it seems like maybe 4 units are for the town, and the remaining 13 are for employees of the Roaring Fork Club? Is that how that's gonna work, or is that still TBD?
Yeah, the 4 of the units were reserved for the town of Basalt, and these are basically described as essential public employees. James can address it better. The first responders are folks that, are kind of first on the waiting list. So 4 of them are set aside for that.
Yeah, and it's a priority system, as with the current Roaring Fork Club affordable housing. They put them out to employees first, and then for the 4 units that are allocated for the town as part of the approvals, they put those out to the town first for town employees. And then, if they don't have interested parties to rent them to, then it falls on to the town's affordable housing guidelines, community housing guidelines.
Tom, on that point, are these gonna be rental units or ownership units or both?
They're all wholly owned.
Pardon?
They'll all be wholly owned.
By the club?
But by individual owners. These are
Oh,
being
they're
sold.
gonna be ownership
Oh,
units
no,
or rental
I'm sorry,
units?
talking about the affordable housing.
Yeah, the
I thought you were talking
affordable.
about- Sorry, Tom, I thought you were
They're
talking
gonna
about the
be
cabins.
all rental, even the town units, so the
Yes, sir.
town won't own them, they'll be leased to town employees.
Similar to the current way that we have 4.
Huh?
Similar to the current approvals where we have 4 that are allocated to us.
Just one final thing. It looks like a lot of pavement up here in this corner. Is it all really needed? Is it all meeting code, or is it well beyond code? Just seems like a lot.
Of what, Kate?
Pavement.
Oh, we are making some headway. There are a couple of things that are driving that condition. One is we're trying to get all the cars off the road. Secondly, we have from a civil engineering standpoint, sanitation is going to be addressed with a pump station, a lift station that's going to be located in that northwest corner. It's the low point of the property, and the state requires us to maintain a 100-foot radius, no build zone. So, yeah, I think we've been self-critical about that. Our first pass at this was, we ourselves were describing this as empire after Stalin sort of site planning, and I think we feel we can, and we already have come up with some alternatives to introduce more landscape and pull buildings apart. So next time you see this, that site plan will be dramatically improved.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
I would just like to commend the collaboration with RAFTA and the consideration of a bus stop and the possibility of getting more vehicles off the road and making it more feasible for employees to take the bus to work at the Roaring Fork Club, which would then reduce the amount of pavement. So if anyone from RAFTA is watching, I please ask for your blessing of another bus stop.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'll add that as well, I agree with P&Z on a displacement plan for the affordable housing. I'm curious about that.
Do you want to say anything about that? I think
Love to. Again, employing over 200 people during our peak, this is a critical need. And believe me, we'll go way above and beyond what the code requires. The relocation plan, again, depending on the pace of all of this, would be a spring or a fall move, and would tightly coordinate it and make sure that everyone affected would be affected to the amount that's minimal. Again, I'd love to share the details, but right now it might affect some of my negotiating position, as you can imagine, in the community where there is no excess or slack in the market. I'm going to have to do some hoop jumping. However, I have the hoops identified, and we've made the preliminary overtures. But I'd happily answer any question if you have any.
So my comments are really on, the water piece, trying to trying to find a way to get water without using trails as access ways to get them there. Don't use the Basalt because creating a water line would close that trail, and it's heavily used. And the connections, the one other connection that you were starting to talk about was the connection to the Albany Kittle Trail.
Sure.
And did you want to address that at all?
Well, we have, can I have the pointer, please? Thank you. So what we've talked about is having a pedestrian easement on the north side of the property, the Albany Kittle proposed development property, so that in the future, if there is the ability to get the necessary easements from the other properties around it, we could have an extension of that trail. But right now, we don't have the easements around it to make that work, so we're setting it up for a future connection if possible.
And that's included in all this?
That's included in the reso, yeah.
'Cause I remember that from 2012.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And then, there's one other thing is, no, actually, you answered it on the
We have a condition that requires us to connect to the old Snowmass,
Basalt also right there.
which is pretty, we'll get there. It's pretty tricky.
They have to come up with a design solution to deal with the slope, and that was a condition of 2012 approvals too. And when they got into the preliminary plan application in 2012, they had a concept that made it work. Probably need fine tuning.
So if there's a way you could get it's just trying to connect all those affordable housing units to a trail is critically important. So finding a way to make that happen would be impressive, and I'm sure the other hat would happy to help design that.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that the Town Council approve Resolution Number 17, Series of 2017.
Second. Okay, motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We'll see you again.
You sticking around? That's good.
So you're gonna get a house out of it?
Congratulations. Thank you. How are you, sir?
Good.
How are you? You too. Oh, Mark,
Spent all the time on driveway safety.
I watched, I watched.
oh, I see.
Wait. I'm gonna have to go in there in a minute.
Okay, we ready for the next? The public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 10. Ordinance of the Town Council approving a lease agreement for construction and occupancy of a performing arts campus on the Town Park Arts Center tract in Willetstown Center property. Susan?
Okay, so as we mentioned previously when we had our work session, at the last meeting, we discussed the ACG report, and one of the pretty significant recommendations in the ACG report was that we move forward with the lease. At the last meeting, we talked about the general framework for that lease. We indicated that it would, is proposed to follow kind of the framework that we had in the Roaring Fork Conservancy lease, where we bought back the property. And basically, it was structured in our packet last time as a 5-year lease, where they really had 5 years to obtain a CO, and at the time of CO, the lease automatically went to a 99-year lease. And we had thrown out at the last meeting some deadlines, deadline for obtaining land use approvals, final land use approvals for phase 1, and that was July 1st, 2018, and a deadline for obtaining a building permit, and that was July 1st, 2020, and then a deadline for obtaining a CO, and that was 2022. In the packet, in the first page of your packet, you'll see 3 discussion items that we flagged. The first one is just, are those deadlines appropriate? There was a discussion at the last meeting that particularly in light of the fact that DeCaw was having the temporary where they were testing out different performances, were we perhaps having a schedule that was too quick, that we wouldn't allow enough time to kind of include what we learned in that experience in the land use approvals. But we didn't have consensus at that meeting. It was an item that was brought up. So I didn't change anything in the lease, but it's flagged here for a discussion item. I think the other issue kind of associated with that is if we're forcing deadlines that are too fast, are we kind of setting up to call for a failure situation if they're really not ready to build? So that's something to consider. We were initially kind of looking at it through that framework of that if they're not ready to go ahead, then we should hold off on the lease. So we wanted kind of some firm deadlines, but that is really a policy question for the town council to weigh in on. The other was just the other performance milestones. The way the lease was structured by Bruce Kimmel and staff is really relying heavily on these land use kind of approval milestones. There's one thing that we added, and that is that at building permit that we would have to have a certification from a bank that was indicating that TCOT actually had money in hand that they could finish construction of the project. And I think this is a really good addition because a lot happens at the time of building permit. Remember, they get because we have it tied also to the financial piece where they get the $1 million versus whatever we've paid into the RETA to date. So we don't want someone just to come in and get a building permit, and they're not really ready to build. So that's one piece of it. But the other piece is just a practical thing that we want to make sure that they do have the resources to complete construction of the building. The third item is kind of the other deal points that we brought up at the other meeting. And there were a number of different subjects, but one of the key ones is just how do we make sure that the arts campus at Willits is integrated into the arts community in the town of Basalt? How do we make sure that it isn't competing with other organizations, that it complements those and doesn't compete with them? And that's one that that's gotten a lot of focus, maybe particularly in the last couple of days. So handed out in front of you is some amended language, but the language that you have in the lease, it's paragraph 5. It's called use of the premises. And the language in here is really geared to making sure that the arts campus at Willits is a performing arts facility. It's not a visual arts facility, it's a performing arts facility. And there's some very particular language in there about that they're not a visual arts campus, and that they won't have arts classes at the facility, and they won't have temporary art or art for sale unless the art base grants them a waiver. The language was written after discussion with the art base. That's how we came up with the language that was, in your packet. TACA had some concerns. They gave us some initial language we weren't happy with, but they've drafted a second draft. That's what's in front of you. And that's what Jenna Moe referred to in the citizen comments, where she said that her board was agreeing to this amended language. So in this little package, it says 9A in the corner. You see Ryan's suggested language. It's usually adding that the art base can waive that provision. And there, by way of example, there's some cases that it might be very appropriate for them to have visual art on display. And so we're just trying to deal with it in a fairly easy way. So attached in your packet is also the amended language that Ryan's referring to here, and there was just a couple other typos that Jody Edwards caught when he looked at it. I know there's one other change that Tom Smith has flagged that he would like to add to the lease, and it really just has to do with the fact that right now, if I think it might be easier.
So, paragraph 20 addresses compensation to the CAW in the event of termination of lease for whatever reason, and disposition of the improvements in that event. As it's currently written, the town is obligated to buy the improvements, and this council can't bind a future council to spend funds that aren't in the budget or in the town's general funds, budgeted and appropriated. So that provision needs to say that it's at the option of the council, of the town, here identified as the landlord. It's at the option, its option to purchase. If it chooses to do so, appraised value makes sense as a way to establish the price, but the agreement needs to be clear that it's at the option of the council at that time because of the fiscal constraints that may exist at that time.
And one other thing just to wrap up my kind of presentation. Maybe one other thing to kind of wrap up my presentation, and that is that the last provision of the lease refers to a yearly report to the council. that speaks to, talking about the social capital benefits at the time that they're making the report, but also speaks to these financial reports that we want TACA to make. And initially, TACA had suggested that maybe the last provision in there regarding reporting on fund balance in a building maintenance and capital repairs fund, maybe that be struck, but we left it in the lease at this time, and we can talk with the applicant more before a second reading. Maybe the last thing that I mentioned is that it's on the agenda as a public hearing. It's not an advertised public hearing. The public hearing will be at the second reading.
So I can't do a public hearing?
You can. I'm just saying that it's not a legal requirement.
Well, I will be I'll do a public hearing just in case, but I'll let Jody and Ryan and
Very quickly, going through Susan's comments, we're okay with the deadlines. We're optimistic. We think we're not worried it's too fast. We think we're going to be there, hopefully even ahead of schedule. The performance milestones are okay with us. And the deal points. I would only add one thing with regard to what Tom is suggesting. I think we need to, and Tom and I can work on this, we need some language for what if the town doesn't exercise its option. So the lease terminates, whether it's because we hit 99 years or because there's some other problem, and the town does not exercise its option, then we got to figure out what to do with the property in the building. It's your property. We're going to be owning, under this lease, we're going to own the building. So now what do we do with it since the lease has been terminated? And I think Tom and I can work on that and come up.
Maybe, but I don't think the council can approve the lease without knowing what that
Right,
is. So we'll have to work on it
between
before
now
the
and
next
second reading. Yeah.
any other questions? Specific questions, I will open a public hearing. It's at 7:32. Any public comments on this? Nope. Close at 7:32. So back to council for discussion.
I have
Okay.
questions. The first one is section 3 or item 3 regarding rent. It seems like this could take staff time to execute, and I feel like perhaps existing leases that we have with nonprofits we haven't charged, but the contemplation of considering something that covers our administrative costs, I would like to put that out there to be considered. My other thing is 16, compliance with law and nonprofit status. The final sentence says the tenant shall maintain IRS 501c3 status. If they don't, do we then fall into 21, the default clause, or do we have to explicitly state?
It would be a default.
Okay, so
And
as it is
so
written, that is a clear default.
Any violation of the, if there shall be a default in the performance of tenant's obligations under this lease.
Okay, I just want
Oh,
to
if
make sure that that's.
that's an obligation, they have to continue to satisfy that requirement.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was
Yep.
clear. And then, I know you both hit on 20, the compensation for improvements, but that is a major concern for me.
Which one?
20, the
20.
compensation for improvements,
The
that
one I
I know
was
that
mentioning,
you're
yeah.
going to consider, or you're gonna continue a conversation related to that, but that is, until that is resolved, this lease to me, I can't move forward with it. That is such a massive obligation on the town as it is written. And Tom, you had mentioned earlier that there could even be some type of maximum amount that's written in there.
Well, first of all, I'm recommending that it be revised so that the town is not obligated, but has the discretion to acquire, right?
Okay.
So that if the financial obligation is unacceptable for whatever reason, or for any other reason, the town can decide not to do it. Now, in terms of setting price, there are different ways of looking at it. And, I'm not a financial expert, but in typically in a transaction where you need to establish a price that's independent of the two parties, an appraisal is a standard way of doing it. But, considering the fact that the town is expending public funds, it may be appropriate to set some upper limit, but the problem is setting the upper limit in terms of real dollars when you're talking about a 99-year lease is pretty much next to impossible to do. So I just don't know how to preserve fiscal responsibility for future council, except, one, to give the council discretion, looking at appraised value, and the town can then decide. Now, with that said, the parties can always agree to something else. I mean, they can voluntarily agree to some other way of dealing with it, but that would be the foundation or the ground floor for any negotiations.
And
Now, I'm sure that what Jody's referring to is if they haven't been able to make it as a performing arts center, chances are nobody can, and so they're probably gonna want some vehicle for the town to consider changing the use of the improvements. And I'm assuming that's what we're gonna have to talk about.
or if it comes back to the town, we would have,
Then the town, if the town owns the land and the improvements,
then we have.
the town has discretion to decide, if it's the owner, what it wants to have happen there in the future. It is, but they can amend it.
So I guess 99 years also is just really, it's forever.
Pardon?
It's basically forever, and it puts us in these difficult, a difficult situation as you just described in terms of creating the value that if this were to ever revert back, is there a solution for that? Does this lease need to be reduced?
I'm sorry, I'm not following the
I'm
question.
basically saying, you just described the quandary we're in by having a 99-year lease.
Right.
And then the clause 20, and sorting that out and how they play together. Do we need to truncate the years of this lease?
I don't know what to put in there, except that you can decide you don't wanna buy it.
It's a different question.
Or, except,
Right.
doing what now?
Decrease
Oh, lowering
the
the number
length
of
of the
years,
lease.
that's a discretionary issue, yeah, I mean.
If that could
it-
then play into making compensation for improvements in item 20, something that's actually going to mean something.
Mhm.
Do we need to reduce the number of
It's,
Yes, please, thank you, Gary. If you decrease the number of years in the term, you're gonna make it equally more difficult for us to go out and talk with donors about putting their money up. And we gotta go raise several $1 million for a building that's gonna disappear in 10, 15, I don't know how many years you're talking about, but by being able to show them a 99-year lease, the forever that you're talking about, it's like, okay, we're helping buy a building, and this thing's gonna be here and be doing what we want it to do forever.
I understand. I feel like it's just, it just makes this difficult. Part 20. Then, I know I was the one that kind of brought this up about what I feel is an accelerated deadline with land use approvals a year from now, and then 2 years, building permit, and then 5 years from now, a completed construction. And the fact that this summer is gonna be your first opportunity to provide programming, and just how that is going to potentially morph your plans. And I know that you don't wanna hear me say that, but, I mean, we have an example in town in which a nonprofit came in with a plan, and it's less than half now that they've had time to really determine their vision, their mission. I mean, and they've existed for 20 years, and they changed their plan drastically. So that's my concern about this accelerated deadline, is that we are not allowing you to learn what this community truly can support.
It can, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have a back door, if that's what you're suggesting, so that, you know, we're going to do our damn best to hit these deadlines. But if by July 2018 we don't hit the land use approval deadline, but you see we're in the process and we're making a good faith effort and you're comfortable with the level of progress, maybe you kick that out another 6 months. And then you do that kind of thing with each one of the I mean, they're your deadlines. If you want to make them longer, great. We're going to try and beat them in any case, whatever they are. But we're perfectly happy for you to let them go longer. And if you want to build that into this document,
It's already built in.
okay, D, wasn't that D or something?
D on
Yeah.
page 3, 6D.
Yeah, it's there. There it is.
So I'm very much in support and 100% aligned with Katie's points and taking those to heart in this document. With the deadlines, I would like to, and how it relates to the financial implications of what is being, we attempted to decouple the financial agreement to the lease agreement, but no matter what, they're inextricably linked. And I would propose extending the deadlines by 12 months for each of these in order for the financial to catch up and be proven to meet the lease agreements. And that's where, yeah, if you beat it's a win-win, and it just provides incentive for TACA to meet those goals, those milestones.
Question on that one. So do you want to move the final deadline by 12 months too, or just the first two?
I'd say all three of them.
All three of them? So there would be basically a 6-year lease at first? Okay. Just want to clarify.
Correct. And as well, section 20, the compensation for improvements, again, it's very concerning. Even if the town chooses to exercise to purchase or not, it's a tremendous possibility of burden for our taxpayers that would bankrupt this town. That's our operating costs for 1 year, and that's truly concerning to put that out there to the future. And if it does, if we do continue with that, I would like to also add the caveat that if the town chooses to exercise, or at any point that all of the monies that the town has invested, the $1 million plus the 230, all of the monies that the town has invested into this endeavor, and I know that it would be difficult to write this in, but are reduced from the actual asking price, or in a way that the town gets it back and the profits do not go back to the TACA organization for the purchase, because that would be taxpayer monies being paid twice. That'd be $2 million from the town of Basalt. And included in that, all waived fees. So if we get to the point of building fees and improvement fees, all of it included in there. And as well, in section 29, regarding reviewing the financials, to include in there, and to keep building maintenance and capital repair fund in addition to audited financials, including the 990 form. Those
Can
are
I
all
just
my
add one
comments.
thing? Just on the building repairs fund, just the trend now is to not keep a fund like that because you essentially are parking money, and you can't leverage it. So the trend is to have a reserve fund of some kind, so, that's why we asked to have that taken out. We certainly wanna have ample reserve funds to deal with capital expenditures that may come up. But a specific fund for that doesn't leave the organization as much flexibility as we would like. So that's why we took that out of there. The trend is moving in that direction, but if it's a must-have, then we can work with that.
I feel that it is a must-have. I went to a really interesting liability put on by Neil Gehring Insurance this morning for construction, and there is a trend of what you lease things having more of the business, the organization's money tied up for future liabilities. And it's maybe in different practices or different organizations' focuses, it does vary. But it just seems like since we are in a partnership with the town, that the town holds building maintenance and capital repair fund, then the organization that we're partnering with should as well, to have that consistency. Those are my comments.
Anyone else?
I want to focus on this, on page 9, number 1. Schedule under deadline 5.
Mike?
Oh, sorry.
What section?
Section 1 on the very first page, deadlines for TCA performance, land use and construction. It says, staff identified the following discussion items. Schedule presented at the May 9th meeting might be too aggressive, particularly given the timing of the temporary and what TCA should learn from that. And I'm totally supportive of the temporary and pop-up performances as your way to build audience, build recognition, build donor appreciation, and build experience in the market. I have no real confidence in some outside marketing study coming up with a realistic number that would be a reasonably good estimate based on the 2 reports that I've seen that were paid for. I think your best estimate will be based on your experience with the temporary. Recognizing that, I think I'd like to see in here that TCA will report every quarter, give us a detailed report on their experience in their pop-up and temporary performances, including audience type of performance, average ticket price, total take for the performance, and cost to put on the performance versus what your gains would be. And I understand some of these would be little or no profit, that I understand going in. But I think that information would be very useful for you to compile and put together in an organized report, and I would find it very desirable to have in as part of the requirement, whether as part of the lease or an addendum or a separate agreement.
We'll be tracking that data, so it's no problem to share that.
Yeah, good. I do agree with Jen about the capital construction fund, the necessity of it. I've been treasurer of the library, and I just think it's prudent and good practice to have a dedicated fund for your capital improvements. It makes spending for those necessary capital improvements much easier and makes our understanding of the building's upkeep and condition much easier.
I have one final comment regarding parking, and it's an interesting one in Willits, that it's fascinating that so many homeowners and residents of Willits come to council or personally to say that there's traffic issues, there's parking issues, it's dangerous getting around in there. And it had been talked about having a parking study, and it seems I myself have lost a little bit hope in studies. The information that we get back maybe isn't always up to date. There's not enough information around here. I don't know what it is. But there is a concern regarding the future in parking and how are we going to mitigate that. So that's what I'm thinking about is future developments, no matter nonprofit, any type. It's all about the car trips and the parking and vehicular pedestrian access. And that has not been discussed in this proposal or this lease. And that's very concerning because of that same exact thing that the residents of Willits in one breath are saying, we're so excited for Takal, we really want a performing arts center, but how different that is in the same breath and the parking and transportation and walking around is so dangerous. So how are we going to partner and mitigate that? And I don't see that in this.
Go ahead.
I don't think there's anything in the lease about parking, and I'm not aware of, yeah,
No,
we
it's
haven't-
in the land use.
it's gonna be in the land use application process that we have to get through by next July plus 12 months. The other thing I would note with regard to the town center area of Willits is there's a lot of construction traffic right now. That's gonna be gone, in a period of years. I don't know when, but eventually, certainly within 99 years. We hope. And I think what you'll find, and I don't know exactly what, the programming, my guess is that a lot of the programming is gonna be late in the day, not,
Let me chime in
Yeah.
on that. The
Okay.
programming will, and I'm not a traffic expert and don't pretend to be, but the programming typically will be later in the day than your high peak hours for traffic and parking. But even more than that, I've already talked to the folks at WeCycle and want to talk to the folks at RAFTA and find ways to incentivize people to use alternative modes of transport, whether that's a discount on tickets, discount on beverage. I'm committed to trying to encourage that behavior by incentivizing that. I've seen that work in other places, and I want to make that happen here. So while I'm no expert on traffic, I'll do what I can to incentivize people to ride their bike, take the WeCycle, to walk, to take RAFTA, or to carpool. So that's my commitment.
And if I could add on the parking, you're correct, that originally we thought we would do a separate parking study. And so two things have happened. One is that Jeff Orsolak, who's on the board of DECA, has submitted to us some additional information. We had initially kind of held off on the parking study because we were waiting for the ACG study to tell us what the programming would mean before we would do the parking study. And the ACG report just didn't take that format in the end, so it wasn't helpful for that piece. But we also put on the developer a requirement. They're submitting a land use PUD amendment.
Do that.
And so we've asked them to do a parking study, and we asked them to review the proposal by a professional parking traffic engineer, and we've asked to look at that proposal before they initiate the work. So we're trying to look at the whole Willits Town Center, but we specifically told them that we wanted to do TACA, and we actually thought it was a better use of, not to use the town RETA funds for the parking study, but instead to put it on someone else, so that's what we've done.
Thanks.
Anyone else? So, my comments on this is that, I do have some concerns with these deadlines, that they're a little onerous, though I'm kind of liking the fact that we put these deadlines on it because we're gonna hear within a year about the temporary. We're gonna hear within a year when they submit their land use application about what they're trying to propose. So personally, for me, I was okay with these deadlines because we're imposing them on them. And so I didn't necessarily want to extend the amount of time for this initial lease because I feel within 5 years we should get something out of this project. And if we don't, it's over and we move on. And we didn't have to build a building and everything else because they didn't meet these deadlines. So that's why I was okay with the deadlines, because in a year, we're not seeing a land use application with all this stuff, and we're not moving forward. Obviously, you learn something new in the temporary piece, and that's that. For me, that's where I'm at with this. You know, right now with the 99-year lease, you know, I do like the capital construction fund. I do like, you know, trying to figure out a better way to determine what we owe at the end. And I think we should come up with something before second reading, is to try to, like, work on that piece, because it is pretty nebulous, because in 90 years, I mean, the appraisal on it is a little strange. So I'd like to see some, personally, I'd like to see some work on that. But I'm not necessarily against the 99-year lease, because this is supposed to be an art center. I don't necessarily have an issue with it going 99 years. If we build this thing, I'd rather them occupy it for 99 years than to get this thing back.
Yeah, ideally, our grandchildren will be sitting in front of your grandchildren saying, give us another 99 years.
Hopefully. And if not,
Hopefully nobody will have to go through that.
well, that's, yeah. So, one other thing I heard was quarterly updates. Do you want, when you talk about quarterly updates, I was thinking quarterly updates for the next year, and then doing annuals after that. Because the quarterly updates that I heard was really telling us how the temporary's going and how that's going, instead of trying to do quarterly updates for the entire 99-year lease. I think that would be a lot.
Yeah, that would be a lot.
Yeah, all right. So, but I like that idea. I like the idea of the quarterly updates, because it gives us kind of an update on where you guys are at with that.
Well, hopefully you folks are
At
hits
all-
in
at
that
all the
data,
shows.
because you're coming to see stuff,
Right,
so
you're
you
part
should be
of
helping
the-
our numbers.
You're part of the dance.
You're the donor base.
Thank you. Gary, I really like the quarterly updates, and I think that it would make sense to have them through, if we do stick with the deadline of July 1st, 2020, until we get to building permit deadline and bank certification deadline, because that is a pivotal point of a lot of triggers being pulled. And having a lot of information up until that point is going to be very comforting in this partnership.
I could live through 2020 with quarterly updates. I don't-
Okay.
you guys have
Yeah,
an issue?
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's acceptable.
Okay.
And I could live in the spirit of negotiation of leaving the land use approval deadline at 2018, but then pushing some point in there, having another year.
What?
Because it's just so onerous.
What suggestion? Since the applicant's okay with the deadlines, and since we have a clause here where we can extend it as needed, let's just leave it and go with it. So that's my suggestion. We modify section 20 about who buys our obligation to buy it per Tom's recommendation, and we could move forward.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make the motion that town council approve ordinance 10 series of 2017 on first reading with the modifications supported by Tom and paragraph 20
And presented at the meeting.
and presented at the meeting.
And set the public.
Set the second reading and public hearing for June 13th, 2017.
Second.
I just have one comment.
Discussion?
So my one comment would be that if we're sticking with July 2018 and we're asking for a final land use approval, there's no way you can take into consideration what you learn from the temporary. Because you should, I mean, I imagine you're working on this rate now. In order to go through the process, there's really no time to contemplate that. But
I would,
we can,
if I could just make a comment, we've talked about this before in sessions. The previous studies, whatever they're worth, I know there's conversations about that, have indicated, and my professional experience supports this, what we've proposed is a building that is as small as it can be in terms of the footprint. So a lot of time and energy has gone into this, and we are going to have data back from the temporary. But in terms of changes to the footprint, I don't anticipate them being very significant changes. It'd be more about the theatrical infrastructure and the internal workflows of the space. The actual spaces in terms of the number of people that are in them for both performing arts and cinematic arts and culinary arts are essentially as small as they can be and as compact as they can be, so that we can be efficient and have room to grow.
Just having a really strong feeling of deja vu. I've been in this seat before in which a nonprofit came in and they knew that they could do 10,000 square feet, and time told a different story. So I'm reflecting on previous experience and history. And again, that organization had 20 years.
All I can share is my professional experience, which is what I've done.
Well, and they've been coming in the
I think another discussion point is I'm not, just as we've stated in so many other agreements, and our position is it's an uncomfortable space and it's not viable to always leave that open of come back and ask for something else. That has bit this town in so many ways, and that's a lot of what this council has been dealing with. And I'm uncomfortable weaving that into a future, and I hope that we learn from our past to bring it into the future. And with, yeah.
We're perfectly okay with the extra time. I mean, this, if you want to add 12 months on every one of those, that's fine. We think we'll meet it, but I don't want this to be a point of contention.
Sure. Well, that's the funny part, is that it really is up to us when to set these deadlines. So
Right.
if we want to push at least the land use approval deadline and the permit building deadline a year, I mean, personally for me, I don't want to push the end deadline, but, pushing those two deadlines a year, it sets no precedent, because they're not going to have to most likely ask for an extension.
Well, and 6D addresses it.
6D does, I mean, so, are we sticking with this, or do you want to move it a year? What is that?
You have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second.
Someone can move to amend.
Sure, does the council want to amend it and delay everything 1 year?
Just the first
The only
two.
way you get to answer that question
It's
is
the
to
vote.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
so someone
somebody,
else make a motion.
Or we just need to vote.
well, no,
Or
you can make a
amend.
It's
motion.
gonna be an amendment, the amendment has to be moved and seconded, and you vote on the amendment first, and then you vote on the primary motion, which would incorporate the amendment.
Does someone want to do that? Or do we stick with this and we can,
I'd like to
potentially do
discuss
it
the
at-
merits a little bit. I feel like I'm voting on something that
we can do it at second reading too. I mean,
Right.
this is not the final approval. So we can have another crack at this at the next one.
I'm not sure I understand the pros and cons of moving it. But I'm ready to move on this motion as it is.
Me too.
Okay, so I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See you next time.
See you in 3 weeks or whatever. Is that you and me?
Killing me. I can't get this meeting done on time.
Yes, sir.
It's either 5 minutes or it's a half an hour, that's your problem.
That thing for 15 minutes. Okay, so we got a first reading of ordinance number 11. Town Council, Town of Basalt, approving a new easement and construction license agreement at 240 Cottonwood Drive in order to widen sidewalk on the east side of Cottonwood Drive. James?
Thank you. As Gary indicated, this is a proposal for an ordinance on first reading that would grant an easement agreement as well as a construction license for the town to be able to widen the sidewalk on the east side of Cottonwood Drive from between 3 and 4 feet to 8 feet. And this would be on the section of Cottonwood Drive that goes from the elementary school, which is located right here, up to Riverside Drive area. And currently it's a very narrow sidewalk. And as background, staff has been working with the town's contract engineer, SGM, on plans for widening that sidewalk. It was a top priority as part of the Safe Routes to School discussions that were going on in 2016. The town has enough right-of-way to widen that sidewalk along the majority of the leg there, with the exception of the 240 Cottonwood Drive property. So SGM, representing the town, has done some negotiations with the property owner of the 240 Cottonwood Drive property, which is Telio Cerise. They came to a conceptual agreement which was formulated such that the town would get the additional easement area in exchange for the town paying for the cost to replace a cracked driveway on Telio's property, as well as to construct a retaining wall adjacent to the location of the new sidewalk, and to kind of do a little bit of regrading in the area between the sidewalk and the driveway. The way it is set up is that the council would review this easement agreement, then the town would put the work on Telio's property out to bid, which would determine the actual amount that the town would pay for the easement. And then staff would come back to the council after we get those bid amounts, and then we can talk about the funding allocation with the council at that point. So staff would actually recommend approval of the ordinance on first reading, and then set a public hearing and second reading for June 13th. Cerise indicated that he was generally accepting of the easement agreement. He did want his attorney to look at it in a little more detail between first and second reading. So staff this evening would recommend taking public comments, providing council discussion, and if you're comfortable with the concept, approving the ordinance on first reading.
Okay. Any questions before I open the public hearing? Okay, I'm gonna open the public hearing at 8:06. Mark?
Hi, thanks, Gary. Should I sit here?
Yep. Gotta be on the mic.
Okay, thank you.
Yelled at.
Hi, Mark Kwasinski. I don't have any children that are attending Basalt schools, but I did take it upon myself to check this out this morning. I had heard that there were hundreds of children that were using the sidewalk, and I don't know, I live on the other side of Cottonwood Lane. So I did do a survey I was there between 7:30 and 8:15 this morning. There were 4 children that actually used that sidewalk coming across the bridge, counting across the bridge, Riverside Drive, Village Court, Village Cove. So there were 4, and in the afternoon I was there between 3 and 4:30, and there were 6 children that used that area. And I will say I was very surprised at the congestion in the morning coming up because there were lots of cars. I didn't really feel that it was dangerous at that point. However, in the afternoon, when the cars were leaving the school, they're going really fast there. And I understand the desire to make that safer. I'm not sure how much a wider sidewalk is really going to make it safe. If you look at the speed limits, there's a couple of things, but if you look at the speed limits around town, the speed limits going out that, and it's around the corner, sort of a fall-away corner, it's 15 miles an hour, which is the same speed limit as Midland Avenue going straight down Main Street, where there's no children, or typically no children, and also Cedar Drive, that's 15 miles an hour, coming down from the Basalt Mountain, where you don't expect to see pedestrians. So if you look at that aspect of it, I would encourage council and the Post and and the police department to take a look at really the traffic control, the speed limit signs. There's 2 speed limit signs as you're coming from Cottonwood Drive as you're coming up. you know, for people to pick up their children and all, on that side. There's only 2 next to the school, and there's one on the corner. If it were me, I know I'm not the expert on this, but I would encourage having the traffic control, the police officers, maybe Officer Chief Knox, take a look at this, and perhaps around the corner, put maybe drop the speed limit to 10 miles an hour or less, and put maybe 5 signs that just say, because there's no signs now that say, you know, it just says 15 miles an hour, and the car is ripped down there. So I understand the concern that whomever is making this request, you know, for it, but I think that should be the first step, really, to reduce the speed limit in that area. So, you know, before, you know, you proceed with, you know, doing a lot of construction, it's because there are several other routes, and if you're going to go ahead with it, but at least maybe add that into the mix if you're going to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Mark, when you say people are ripping down there, if the speed limit is 15, are they going 20 or are they going 30?
Well, usually, I mean, typically people go 5 miles an hour over the speed limit.
Yeah.
So I think maybe they were going 20, but if maybe you made it 8 miles an hour.
Yeah.
15 miles an hour, maybe up to this, I think that's too fast as well. I happen to live down there, you know, on the 7-Eleven Park, and I always thought it was sort of fast, but when I walk down there, I'm like, oh, if I was a kid, and the road is narrow too. And so the cars are only a couple of feet away from you, and they're going fast. So maybe Officer Knox could check that out.
Any other public comment? I'll close public comment at 8:10. Bring it back to council for discussion, questions. Anybody? Mark?
How much of Telio's land do we need to buy?
I think it's like 6 feet wide, basically.
Presently at his location, the sidewalk's 6 feet wide?
No, at his current location, it's like 3 feet wide.
Because in my opinion, I just don't see the need for an 8-foot sidewalk.
And, you
I
know,
mean, if
think-
we were downtown on 16th Street in Denver, maybe, but
I think the concept is to widen it, to get the kids as far as buffer as they can have away from the
are we gonna have a high curb then?
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that then. That's about all I had.
Okay. Anyone else? Jen?
How does it work with the other landowners? I know that the path to the school, you then have the utility telephone thing, and then you have the Cerise. And so why is there this one easement issue with this one property?
To be honest, I don't know, but the right-of-way is wider on the other properties there, and this one sticks out, and so you're into their property if you want to widen the sidewalk. But the rest of the way and the rest of the kind of leg there, the right-of-way is wide enough to extend it to the 8 feet.
Okay.
Cerise is an old property,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's where Mom lived, yeah.
Really? So that's probably why we didn't get it.
Well, and seeing on the accounts payable, the amount that we have been paying to engineer this project, there's no turning back. Like, that would be money ill. Or am I thinking of another one with the stairway?
No, that's part of it.
Okay.
You know, and I would like to note that we did think about speed. There is in the plans for the extended sidewalk and the improvements, they're proposing a speed table on that stretch of Cottonwood Drive there from Riverside to the elementary school. So they're going to try to slow the speeds down as well as extending the sidewalk.
Yeah, and this is the overall safe routes to school stuff we were talking about during budget last year, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And so it is an integrated plan with speed reduction, because I did see that in there, and so that's still included in the project itself.
It is.
Yeah, because I do agree with Mark that people go flying down that road and flying up that road. You know, I make sure that if my kid, when he leaves school, I let him go by himself downtown. He doesn't go that way, he goes the other way, all the way around, even if he's going back up to get a haircut or something like that.
Yeah.
Cause it's, people do drive fast on that curve. I pass that curve and it's bad. So, but I'm overall with the speed bump in there, with the speed table, I'm pretty supportive of safe routes to school, so. Anyone else?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move that the Town Council approve Ordinance 11, Series of 2017 on first reading and set the second reading and public hearing for June 13th, 2017.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Oh, against, oh, sorry. Okay, so we are now on to finalization decision on town manager contract. So we are right now in public session. Does everyone want to remain in public session to discuss the contract with Ryan Mahoney? Ryan has emailed that he's okay with a public discussion on the contract. I would say if we get into points of contention, that we table those points of contention and potentially discuss them in executive session to protect not only the town, but also to protect Ryan, so he doesn't, you know, we don't have to negotiate all those pieces in it. And Ryan is, I think, available, or?
Yes, he's standing by, he'll be available by phone if you want, as is Phil.
Oh, okay. So I think, let's see where we go on this. If we're pretty much in agreement on everything, we remain in public session. If we do have points of contention and we do want to talk to Ryan, that Ryan probably would want to talk about that in executive session, so we do that.
I'd just like to add that I have not seen this email from Ryan, and I'm going to trust, but I would prefer to see the
Well,
release
yeah.
and
I thought it was forwarded to,
I thought I got it.
I forwarded it to everyone on Monday the 15th, along with my comments on each of Ryan's 10 points.
But that wasn't his agreement to have a public discussion about.
Oh,
the
that
Right.
part. He sent that to me.
So we have in writing.
we haven't seen that.
So you have it in writing.
I have it, yeah. Isn't that good enough that I'm telling you I have it?
For me, having the town attorney having it is good enough for me.
And to clarify, he's fine with every aspect of that contract being discussed.
I'm sorry,
And he has agreed to have every aspect of the contract discussed tonight
yes,
in public.
yeah.
Okay.
And he doesn't have, he's not covered by, he's not an employee of the town. He's not covered by any Colorado laws on personnel rules or anything else.
But
Okay.
we are negotiating a contract, and we agree to negotiate a contract in public. That's what we're agreeing to.
You don't have to discuss it in public if you don't want to, but
But that's the thing is, it's not it's a written consent.
it's what?
Well,
a
right
written-
now, you don't need written consent. He's not a town employee. John has gotten Ryan's consent to discuss this in public session. It's up to us if we want to do this in public session or executive session, so.
You don't need anything from him. The rules on open meetings law and personnel matters relate to your employees.
And I understand that. I feel like we are in negotiation, and
Right.
I don't want to harm someone or have a person feel harmed before they're even in our employment. And so that's what I want to know, and it sounds like you
He has agreed.
have the reassurance in writing that
Yes.
Ryan is okay. We are going to discuss and negotiate his contract in public.
He has agreed that the town can discuss this in public, yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I've had conversations with Ryan about this, and in general, that's correct. If it gets to some major issue, I think he would be less comfortable doing that and having that done in public. I
Well,
mean,
that's why
But that's-
originally I said, let's see where we go in public session, and if we have major issues, we'll load them down, and instead of being, you know, public with it all, maybe we get Ryan on the phone and we can talk about it, or we can talk in executive session to do that. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Cool.
So if you'd like, I'll run through it. I've had a discussion with Phil McKenney on these points, and he couldn't speak with certainty about Ryan's position relative to the comments I made to Phil, which are identical to the ones I made to you. But he didn't seem to think at the end of our discussion that there would be any major roadblock to reaching agreement from Ryan's standpoint. Before going into Ryan's specific 10 points, I'd like to bring your attention to page 5 of the proposed agreement, termination without cause.
Tom, where do we have this? Excuse me for interrupting you, but I don't have this printed or
I don't have it
online.
either
We
in my
need all this
packet.
information to discuss it.
Well, I don't prepare the packet. I've sent everyone the contract.
I'm looking, does anyone have that on their email that can forward it? Because it's not in,
It's on everyone's email.
I can do it.
thank you,
I can also make copies.
thank you.
Do
You don't have to make one for me, I got it.
I don't need one.
What date is it from Tom?
I have 12, 5/12. Is that the
Okay.
one?
Yep, 512 is the latest one.
Need Ryan's points?
I would like his points.
And I would like Ryan's points, yes.
Yes, please.
Do you have Tom's points?
No.
No.
They were sent May 15th, 3:17 PM.
Yeah, Tom's point, Tom was,
And my points
your points were sent 5:15.
at 3:17 PM, attached to which was Ryan's 10 comments as part of the email chain.
It's just not everyone's digital, so we need to provide the information to everyone.
I'm sorry?
Not everyone works in the meeting digitally, and so we need to provide the paper to everyone.
They're making copies.
The version of the contract that you would be looking to forward, I believe, is Friday, May 12, 2:10 PM.
Got it.
I sent it to you, Jen.
Okay, thanks.
Jen Riffle wasn't found at Basalt.net? What? They took you off.
Oh, yeah. I found it in my email another way.
That's so funny. I just sent it to you and it says you weren't found at Basalt.net. Oops.
Did you get my phone message?
I knew I'd see it here. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Okay.
Sounds like we have some time.
Yeah.
60 years.
60 years. I don't know how my mother did it.
We have a big party.
No, she's got the dementia going, and
Sorry to hear that.
yeah.
I'm good, I've got it.
They set me up for failure on these times.
Have to.
Thanks.
Bad.
Give me 5 minutes to talk about to talk.
Well, let's hope it's the right version. I believe it is.
it's, I have it.
If you have an extra copy, I'll take it just to be safe.
And Ryan's changes have been incorporated into this?
No, they're separate.
Ryan's changes have not been incorporated into this.
Well, I don't have Ryan's changes either.
I,
They're working on printing them for us.
They're coming. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, something. You're right, sorry. Well, they're coming.
They're coming.
all right. So is Christmas.
They're
Not
they're-
fast enough.
they're typing them up on a typewriter, and then they're gonna fax them over.
Not Morse code 'em.
I thought they were gonna be put in the mail first
Oh, yeah.
and then,
Sent to Junction. And
It actually shows why we need a town manager. It's about time. Get this thing off the road. This packet here are Tom's comments and Brian's comments.
right. Yes, both are in there. And I can walk you through them. They're not complex in concept, and there's no, he hasn't proposed any alternative language to review. It's concepts, and I can walk you through those.
Got it, Dave, I'll take it, just to please you.
Just to make me happy. All righty. We have piles of paper.
So is everybody all set?
Yes.
Okay, so before, the first three issues, quote unquote, that are in Ryan's email relate to severance. So before, my first comment is on severance, but it's different than the three specific points that he's raised. So let me mention my concern first. If you go to page 5 of 10 on the agreement, that the paragraph subsection D of section 5 is termination without cause. And I'm recommending two changes, which I mentioned to Phil, and he thought were appropriate. First, after it says, in the event that the employee is terminated, and I want to make it clear that it has to do with termination during the effectiveness of the contract, as opposed to what could be construed as a termination by allowing the contract to run out. And so it would say, in the event of the employee is terminated during the term of the agreement for any reason other than causes outlined in subparagraph C. Subparagraph C is termination for cause, in which event he does not get severance. This and then the other change would be to eliminate third line, fourth line after the reference to subparagraph C. That these two clarifications are for the purpose of specifying that if the employment agreement simply runs out after its 2-year period, he doesn't get severance pay. He only gets severance pay if he gets, basically if he gets fired.
So you're
without
you're
cause.
changing that, the one we have says, the employer agrees to pay severance.
No, before that,
Okay.
where it says employer declines to renew or extend the term of this agreement after employee's completion of the full term or an extension thereof, I'm recommending deleting that.
So-
The effect of which is that he doesn't get severance if the contract simply runs out at the end of 2 years.
I'm
Okay?
with that.
I'm okay.
Yeah, that should be clear.
Yes. So his first three comments of 10 relate to severance. These are all asks. None of them were framed as demands. The first is that the severance package, if and when it ever kicks in, includes provision for health insurance for some period of time. We wrote it in as 6 months. He wants it to be 12 months, which is the same as the other compensation. This is a negotiated point, doesn't have legal, it's not driven by legal considerations. It's up to you to decide what period of time you want to provide him with health benefits in the event that he gets severance.
And to be clear, health benefits would only be for the town manager, not his family or any dependents. It's solely for him.
So, we have to offer, so if he has family coverage, we have to offer the same coverage that's in place at the time.
Judy, I think you need a mic.
But this is asking us to cover Ryan and his entire family for up to 12 months.
It would be an extension of whatever coverage he
for it.
has.
Well, we had originally 6 months, right?
It's 6 months written in there now.
Okay. Why don't we just stick
It
with
says
6 months?
employer's share of the cost of
Okay.
employees' health insurance for 6-month period.
Why don't we just stick
Yeah.
with 6 months?
I'm good with
Yes.
What do you want to do?
Stick with 6.
Stick with 6. Second point. He has the benefit, he has a housing benefit. As you know, this has been the subject of significant negotiation. And he has asked that if he gets severance because he's terminated without cause, he doesn't want to have to leave while his kids are, he wants to have a transition period, defined either by the end of the current school year or a 6-month period to stay in the unit so that he doesn't have to immediately vacate.
I'm happy with the school year.
School year?
So don't kick the kids out of school.
I'm good.
I am not.
I'm
I would not support an allowance at all. And if he wants to stay in our housing unit, then he can pay rent, market rent.
Okay, so I need a sort of, not a vote, but a show of hands on where we're headed on this issue.
I'm okay with the school year.
School year, 2 school year, 3 school year.
I'm okay with staying in the house the school year, but no allowance.
And if he stays in.
That is the allowance is staying in there.
Okay,
No, it says housing unit or allowance.
or get his housing, or get a
Oh, I
housing
see what you're saying, okay. Well,
allowance. I would not,
he can remain in the unit for the balance of the current school year?
And
Paying
we-
rent.
And we as a town are going to allow him to stay there rent-free? Is that what?
That's what you need to decide. Does he pay rent for the extended period?
I think he pays rent.
I know he
As
pays
well.
rent.
Yes.
Okay,
You could pay rent, but define the rent.
Market rent plus utilities and HOA.
I think it's better if you pick a number, because if you say market, then you gotta get into a negotiation.
Yeah,
So a 3-bedroom Willits,
2,000.
2,400.
no, it's great. A 3-bedroom is closer to 2,800. And then utilities on top of that.
Well, whatever the 3 bedrooms are going for. Yeah,
Right.
We're within the next 2 years here, so it's
Okay.
what?
why don't you just do the like what Jen just said, the category. You do it on the category.
Oh, as a the category restricted
Because
price?
it's not free market, it's affordable housing
Right,
unit
I don't wanna
that's
go
going,
free market.
yeah,
At the category restricted price, okay.
Plus all utilities
correct.
and HOA.
He's already obligated on that. The third,
Wait, did we finish that?
Is it a category 3 or the category just the normal rent on that unit?
whatever it is, I don't know what it is. It doesn't have a deed restriction yet.
So if he's terminated, he can stay in the housing unit but pay rent, and we do not have an allowance continuation, if that is the other thing he's getting, right? So everyone got the,
And we're saying that it would be to the end of the school year
The then current school year.
Right.
or
He
6 months, whichever
suggests-
is greater.
Yeah.
Well, that's your option. You can use I mentioned that, you can use a monthly period or whatever you want
No,
to do.
because we might want to have that 3-bedroom Willits unit for the next town manager, and we would be essentially paralyzing ourselves. So I think that we should go for the 6 months or whatever is greater.
6 months or school year, whichever is lesser.
Correct.
Whichever, lesser or greater? You want lesser.
Lesser.
He wants at least 6 months, is what it amounts to.
Well, it does put us in a situation in which we
If
don't.
he wants 6 months,
potentially-
then let's just give him 6 months, that's
He
definite,
pays rent?
yeah.
well, we
I mean,
don't put potential help.
conceivably, school year is longer. If he ends in the fall, then you've got a long school year coming up.
True.
I mean, this is a judgment
6 months
call
is
as to
fine with
which
But-
one do you,
But it potentially puts the council in a situation in which, when we go to find his replacement, we do not have housing, so we've lost a unit of housing, we're going to find a unit of housing, or pay an allowance. We're just putting ourselves into a situation in which we're indebting ourselves, for lack of a better term.
But I'd say it's a short-term problem, and it's not super likely, so you're right, I agree with you, but I think we can include some provision just because we'll be able to manage that, it's not forever.
School year,
I'd say
6 months, so that's Jen.
I propose 6 months or school year, whichever is less.
That works.
I'm fine.
It's fine.
Okay.
okay.
At whatever the category, the deed restricted rental price
That it's
is.
deed restricted, otherwise deed restricted price.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm just, on a minor point like this, if he's terminated in September, he's gotta get out in 6 months, he's asking for this kind of consideration from the town to go to the end of the school year.
That's what he's asking for.
I'm okay with end of school year.
So you're saying greater rather than less.
He's asking for greater. To me, let's not fight over a small issue and create a negative feeling when we don't really need to.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just foreseeing a potential problem in which we're gonna be like, we have a wonderful person to replace you, but yeah,
This is
we'll
for-
have to find you alternative housing.
Mm-hmm.
This is for us saying goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
This is when the council says goodbye. That's the only reason for this, so, if we're saying goodbye, how much severance do we want, how long do we wanna let them stay in the, and I'm okay with the 6 months or the school year, 6 months or less, because that, in 6 months, he's gonna have to figure
That's
out
fine,
something
I'm
different.
fine.
And that's, it's a generous,
I think
Okay.
it's very
I think we're
yeah,
good.
it's very generous.
Less? Okay. All right, next point, actually, the next point isn't a severance issue. He's asking for a remedy if the town breaches the contract, and you'll see in my comment is that a distinction should be made between major and minor issues, because we don't want a repeat of what we had before, and that's on basis of some technicality, someone can claim severance. So I reviewed the contract with the, keeping the distinction, the concept of distinguishing between major and minor in mind, and it seems to me the only, when you look at this contract comprehensively, the major obligations of the town relate to his compensation. That's it. The other points are rather minor. So I could recommend that, now bear in mind, we do have an opportunity to cure, we get notice and opportunity to cure a breach, but I would limit it to material breaches, all of which would be in the compensation specified in section 6. So that if the town gets notice that it's not providing adequate compensation, as provided there, salary, benefits, retirement, housing, et cetera, we get an opportunity to fix it. If we don't fix it, which is hard to imagine, then we would be in breach, and he could resign. As I say, limiting it to the compensation package is, I think, a reasonable distinction between major and minor, and I certainly can't recommend that it be all-encompassing, because let's say there's a disagreement about whether the council has given adequate direction on his what he's supposed to do. Oh, you breached the agreement because you didn't tell me what to do. I don't think that's something we ought to be worried about having a fight about, so.
I like that. I mean, to me, that sets what really truly is, and if we're not paying him or
Yeah.
doing any of those things, that's a,
If you read through the contract, you'll see the town has no other major obligations under the agreement. Okay?
What about 9-month review?
Well, I don't even think that should be considered. I mean, if we miss it by a few days, do you think we should be subject to some
No. No, I think your
liability?
suggestion was
yeah.
well taken.
Okay. Okay, then on to number 4. He wants the opportunity to cure on the violations for cause, or that provide cause, which I believe is section 5. Let me get my thing out here. Yeah, termination for cause, section 5. And he would like, termination for cause includes the following, and it lists 6 items. And he wants he wants notice and opportunity to cure, which to me is not unreasonable, but not all of them are subject to cure. So my recommendation would be that we make that clear in here, that where the council views that there is an ability to cure, that he'll get notice in that period of time. But certain things like a conviction of a felony, you can't cure that, right? It's done. So it shouldn't apply to everything.
I would say the only thing he can cure is number 2, those things.
Well, a willful breach of a material provision, so let's say he didn't follow his duties and you want to discipline him for that, maybe he could fix it. You failed to do something that we told you to do. If he can fix it.
Well, isn't that the
Seems-
same as dereliction or nonfeasance?
Well, it's close, but nonfeasance dereliction could apply to obligations that are the result of the agreement rather than incorporated in the agreement. So, for example, the council has the ability under this contract to assign additional duties other than those that are in the contract. Those would be covered by 2. A willful breach of a material provision would be something that's actually stated specifically in here.
Jen?
So what my question is, who decides if it's cured or not?
I say you decide.
I know, and it's a tricky one with a board of 7.
No, it's not. You have a vote.
Yeah, we get a vote.
Right, we have a vote.
I like to kind of just stick it to ones that can be cured
Right.
and not do it to, I don't know, if we just termination for cause, I mean, the gross dereliction of habitual neglect of duties, I don't know. What do people think?
I would give him an opportunity to cure if he can.
That's what I mean, I think you should say, subject to notice and an opportunity to cure when the town determines in the exercise of its reasonable discretion that there is an ability to cure.
That's good. That is
Does,
good.
does that open us up for litigation in the future if it goes to a court and Mr. Mahoney says, claims, argues, I could have cured that?
Of course.
Right, so.
Every contract is opening yourself up to litigation. I'll promise you that.
But this specifically, Tom, not.
I mean, I can't guarantee you that there's not, that he couldn't contest that.
Sure.
But even the way it's written, he can contest it. I mean, he could say, well, I didn't do that.
Okay.
I like what you said.
And in that, what you said, there would be some deadline, timeline?
Oh, yeah, it's like 10 days to cure, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, some of these are minor, and hopefully we can blow by them pretty quickly. Number 5, he has to get bonded. Davis probably knows more about this than I do, but the costs of that are pretty minor, aren't they?
I'll take care of
Okay, so we pay that?
$100.
And what does it cost?
$100.
Okay. Performance review. Now, we decided that we wanted to use a 9-month performance review in order to have his status settled going into an election, so that it wasn't an issue that was up in the air going into the next election, less issue for council to be worried about. And so, I don't know if he's really aware that if we have the review in 9 months, it's sort of a substitute for a 1-year review.
Yeah.
And to also have a 1-year review seems unnecessary because it's only a 2-year contract. So if you have a review at 9 months, it pretty much takes you seems to me, takes you up to the end of the 2-year contract period without the need for a second review. If you want to do it, it's of course discretionary. And then, of course, even if you don't have it in here that he gets another review, you can always agree to do another review anyway.
Well, you wanna set it, I mean, that's the problem we have with Mike, is I'd like to set it, and you do wanna set it up in the contract, because otherwise council's
Okay.
gonna start forgetting, and we did that 1 year
Okay?
with Mike, we didn't get it done in a year, and
Right.
if it
So
says
do you
it in
want
the
a review in
contract-
addition to the 9-month review?
I would say 9 months is a great deal, and then we would review
You want to have,
annually after that.
Yep.
but there's no annual after that because it's
There is.
only a 2-year
No,
contract.
9 months, and then 12 more months, that's your next review.
Right, so
That's,
we're
so
only,
that would
we're-
be,
21.
19 months.
yeah,
21
9 and-
months.
19 months,
And then it goes on from
21.
there.
yeah. 'cause
so
it-
the second one, give me that again, the second one would be
9 months. and
12
then a
months
year
after the
then.
9-month?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So 9 months and 21 months. Because
I
that,
think if you explain it to him, he'll understand why.
Okay. Then, he's getting, as you know, he's getting a short-term tenancy in the, what unit is it? Okay, and he wants that to be actually stated in here, it's not stated in here? Does anybody have a problem with that?
Fine with me.
Okay. Similarly, there's no provision for his pre-planned July trip that he's mentioned and has asked for.
That's fine.
That should be okay too, right?
Yeah.
I thought we looked into it, it's bereavement, and we have a bereavement policy.
right, it needs to be written out that the bereavement is a credit of 5 days, whatever the employee manual states.
Well, if it's in the manual, I don't think we need to deal with it, but he's only asking for this July one.
But we need to count that in and state that it is the bereavement period plus, we need to decide, is it unearned vacation time? Is it, we don't have this written, do we have this written down? We discussed it and it feels like we agreed upon it, but it's not written
How
anywhere.
long is the trip?
2 weeks.
2 weeks at the end of July.
What did we come up with before? Do you have notes from that?
On,
I
The
thought we
plan, the
agreed to,
bereavement,
The bereavement
I thought we agreed that he would simply get the employee handbook stated policy.
So the handbook states that the first 5 days are given, and then you take it to your supervisor, and we've had instances.
microphone, Judy, they can't hear you.
5 days is the handbook, and then it's up to the department head after that, so it would fall back to you guys to decide. And we've had instances, if it's an immediate family or, a parent, that some days, depending on travel, 5 may not be enough. So whatever you guys decide, we'll administer it in the payroll side.
Can
I'm
he,
okay to credit some
I was gonna say go into the arrears for vacation time or sick time or whatever.
Absolutely, whatever you tell me to do.
Well, there's a number of
we
options
agreed
here.
upon.
Among his benefits is specifies 20 vacation business days per year.
Will you credit what we just
So
said
we
is
could
credit?
say he uses that 2 weeks.
Well, no, he gets 5.
for bereavement.
He gets 5 for bereavement, so it would only be 5 days of work time that he would be taking off, so basically he gets a credit for that, and you pay it off, he'll only get 9 days
But the other 5 would come out of his
Vacation
20
pay.
vacation days?
Correct.
Okay.
Does he start at 0 on vacation days?
Yes, so they're
Yes.
going to be credited to him in advance.
Okay.
Gary,
Yeah.
just to be clear, it seemed like he was asking for this in addition to his contract, right? So he wanted the 2 weeks, and then everything would kick in. Is that?
It's not clear to me if he was actually asking for it to be in addition to his 20, or just wanted to be sure that he could schedule it and do it at that time.
Okay.
He said it in his email that he was okay to credit some vacation. I don't know.
I
It
see.
says, I'm okay with it, but is very typical to credit some vacation and sick leave for new managers.
Right.
So,
Okay.
That's why I asked, is he
Yes.
starting at 0?
He starts at 0, we're
Yes.
giving him the
We're
ability to
crediting.
take it and
So what Mark is suggesting is, do you guys want to bank something
I would bank 5 days for him. I mean,
of both sick and vacay?
well, it depends on what he's taking.
So are we talking about this specifically, or are you just talking about starting bank?
This specifically.
Okay.
So he's already getting 5 days for bereavement.
I understand that, but I don't want to fight over 5 days when someone's died and he's got to,
yeah, to me, this is just so minor.
yeah.
So I'm not clear where we are. He uses 5 days bereavement, and
We
what
do this
about?
with new employees all the time.
Give him 40 hours of vacation.
Yep, and it seems invariable. You'll hire somebody in,
We do it
And the
all.
40 hours, does it come out of his 20 or not?
no, we're gonna bank
Does
it.
not.
No, it does not.
Not out of the 20.
Vacation this first year, because we're not gonna use bereavement, or we are using.
We are using bereavement, we're banking the 5 additional days, so he'll still get his vacation time.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
That's okay.
Let me write it down.
Then, number 9, he's asked for automatic renewal after 2 years. I don't agree with that. I think that if it's a 2-year agreement, it's a 2-year agreement, and the council should have a level playing field to decide what you want to do, rather than have to argue against an automatic renewal. The whole point of having the 2 years is that it isn't automatic,
Right.
so, okay?
Giving them 2 years.
Right.
That's it.
And start date June 26th is proposed.
That's a Monday, I'm assuming.
and when is his July trip? Is it?
I don't know the exact dates.
Last 2 weeks in July.
It says last 2 weeks, but I don't know the numbers.
Okay.
I'm good with the 26.
Oh, yeah, we got to clear that with you, don't we?
He's asking you.
You've gotten the respect of Pam already, that, you've done something well.
Okay, so, we don't have this all written up.
But we're gonna have to vote on a
And-
contract, right?
Right, and I think you should have it written up before you have an official vote.
Yes.
So, at this point, maybe the most, I mean, we're a month away, so it's not like it's gotta be inked tomorrow, but,
But you have 3 weeks before the next meeting.
so, right, but I could, with your authorization, communicate your position on these various issues to him and, let you know what his response is at that point.
And if we need to do a quick
Special meeting
a
Well,
quick
I'll
special
let you
meeting
know.
to make it happen,
I'll
let
let
us
you
know.
know. And I'll also have to let you know if there are any, if he wants to negotiate any of these points further, I'll let you know that.
And Tom, can you please email us your edited version that you're going to submit to him of what we've covered this evening?
Yeah, I'll provide you with exactly what I'll provide
Okay.
you with the exact same thing he's gonna get. Yeah,
Great, anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Judy, I have a quick question. What is the $400 to Woody Creek Distillers in accounts
I
payable?
know, I realize that.
It'll be a short, easy meeting, I'm gonna need,
I jinxed us and
I
you bungled the
told-
meeting.
Yeah.
hey, no.
Hey, I told my wife that, I said what he said.
He did.
I just wanna know what it's gonna be.
I
I told my wife,
Maybe now you know why we don't let the public into these.
So because